As I was preparing for today, I recalled some years ago, I celebrated this very same solemnity just as I was beginning a transition. I was leaving my post at St. Mary in Palmdale, and I was going to go and take on the role of administrator at St. Albert the Great Church in Compton, or West Rancho Dominguez, depending on how you get the line. But I went out to celebrate Mass with a small group of Carmelite sisters who at the time had a convent retreat center and daycare center out there in probably one of the most desolate places in the Archdiocese, which is Lake Los Angeles. I don't know if you've ever been out to Lake Los Angeles, but there's not a lot out in Lake Los Angeles. And you have to go quite a ways to get to the convent. And it was a group of about half a dozen sisters that were there and it was their feast day because they were the Carmelite Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. So it was their feast day of celebration. And I remember in my homily telling the sisters about even in the most desolate places, the heart of Jesus brings a freshness and a new life and a beauty to something that can in so many ways seem to have nothing. And to always remember that even in the farthest places or wherever they find themselves in mission, that is what Jesus can bring to any place. And it made me reflect a lot about my own formation, not just as a priest, but also just in my own life as a disciple of Jesus, at least as I hope to live it. And recalling how important it was to understand that the heart of a priest must be the heart of Christ, must be the heart of Jesus. But in the last few years, I've been realizing that it's not just priests that need to have that heart. It's everyone. Everyone who takes on the name of Jesus, everyone who takes on the name of Christian or disciple must have the heart of Jesus. And so I recall a moment when I was in seminary. I was having a kind of a difficult time with my vocation, wondering about third year theology. I was starting to say, is this really it? Is this really what God? Because, we're getting close, right? Having to make choices here. And my spiritual director gave me some advice that I'll never forget. He says, I want you to go and find a nice chair with kind of a high back so you can sort of lean against it. And he says, I want you to imagine yourself being John, the beloved disciple, at the Last Supper, just leaning into the chest of Jesus and listening for the heartbeat of Jesus. Just listen to that heartbeat, and you will understand where Christ will be leading you. And every time I've hit those troubled waters, I lean back on Jesus and try to listen more intently to that heartbeat, because it is that heartbeat, that pulse, that constant, eternal impulse of mercy and compassion that springs forth from the heart of Jesus, that compels all of our ministry, all of our efforts. It washes away the weariness and the difficulties and the frustration, and it helps us to overflow once more with compassion and with mercy. And Pope Francis has said, he said something quite lovely about that, kind of in the same vein. He says, the heart of Jesus is the ultimate symbol of God's mercy, but it is not an imaginary symbol. It is a real symbol, which represents the center, the source from which salvation from all humanity gushed forth. For a heart to function, it needs to be supple. It needs to be able to contract and move. It can't be rigid, and it has to hold its form so that the blood flows. We must also have that kind of ability to move, to stretch with the strain of ministry and the demands upon which we are given, the challenges that we face, knowing that as we're stretched to the limits, the lifeblood of the Spirit will flow through us if we remain open and close to that heartbeat of Christ. When I was called into this ministry to come to religious education, I have to tell you kind of a funny story. I've stopped saying never about ministry because when I was 15, I told my parish priest I would never be a priest. That didn't work. Then I said, but I may be a priest, but I'm never going to work in the ACC. That didn't happen. Then I started working in the ACC, and I said, well, they'll never make me director. So I stopped saying never. So don't say never, because that just gives God another opportunity to show his wondrous providence and care. But it also, but when I did enter the work here, I said, I'm not going to treat this any different than I would if I were in a parish community. I wanted to bring the same kind of approach to the people here that I would bring in any place, which is hopefully to bring the face of Christ to be more revealed, or to be more present. And so that is what I hoped I was able to do to some. And so I go now to a parish community, back to the kind of the origins of the charism of my vocation, which is life in a community, in a parish, filled with my heart full to the brim with so many blessings. And how many of you have been Christ to me? And knowing from all the scriptures we hear today, no matter what happens, God will walk with us and he will shepherd us all the way, no matter what happens, and that we are called to do the same. We are called to allow our heart to beat in rhythm with the heart of Christ, so that that same compassion and mercy which overflows from Jesus flows through us, that others who are lost, broken, wounded, isolated, alone, damaged, may find in encountering us, encountering the source of all goodness and life and healing, which is Christ. And if we all spend our lives doing that, then we will have done a good thing. So let us all kind of lean into Christ, listen to that heartbeat, and allow our hearts to beat in sync with his. That his mercy and love and compassion and truth may flow ever more freely in the world.